Oh, thank you so much, sir. Firstly, I'll come to the fore. Yeah. Um, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining in for this webinar. Thanks to SNDTC and Ravi sir for giving me the opportunity to share my views, on something. Uh, Good evening, Divyani ma'am. Assessment which is based on competencies. So it's going to be a little long, so please be patient. I was trying to rehearse it in the afternoon today, and I found it's quite a long kind of a presentation. So I think without wasting any time, let me just start off with the presentation. And because it's very long, I do not have too many activities, right? So welcome to this webinar hosted by SNTTC. And today we are going to talk about competency-based assessment. But before that, I have to introduce myself. So here are my credentials. I am Mrs. Archana Mathur. I'm a freelance trainer. My qualifications are MA in English Literature and BEd. I've been a PGT English for quite some time, and then I also worked as a CBSE school principal for about 7-8 years. And currently, I'm an AIEF Global Ambassador. I'm a YouTuber. I'm a resource person on the SNTTC. And my channel is Eloquent English Enterprise. And very recently, I've just joined as Director, Editorial Affairs in IELTA, which is International English Language Teachers Association. So I've been lucky to be a part of that. And of course, I have 25 years of very passionate experience as a teacher and as a principal behind me. So that was it. And now let's talk about the moot point which we are here today for. Now, when we talk about competency-based assessment, I would love to ask my elite audience, what is competency? I mean, what do you understand by the term competency? Assessment, we all know. So what, according to you, is competency? I'll, of course, share, but I'll be glad if somebody pulls in or joins in.
Ma'am, high order thinking questions.
No, they are questions. I'm talking of competency. When we are trying to promote competency or we want to develop competency in our students, so the assessment has to be based on those competencies. So what is competency? I was wanting to know.
Ma'am, if you are given a situation, if you are given a story and you are supposed you are put in that situation,
Okay.
how would you respond?
Okay. That is your competence in that particular situation, right?
Yes.
Great. Good. Anyone else? Okay. This is a holistic approach to evaluate learning. So this is just an introduction. It's a very vast topic. I'm trying to cover as many aspects as possible, but it's huge. So one day doing it will not really work. So this is a holistic approach to evaluate learning in the best possible manner. That is, we are not just marking our students on their rote learning. Okay, we are going to test their competencies, and competencies also are of various types. So I'll just proceed very fast. One sec. Okay, so what are competencies? This, according to me, are competencies. They are a combination of knowledge, skills, abilities, and behavior that individuals acquire and apply to perform tasks or activities effectively. Now, when I'm giving a very, very normal kind of an example, when we are to make a drawing or a sketch or something, there are so many things which are involved. Firstly, we have to understand the knowledge of the topic that you are taking up. The skill, that is eye-hand coordination. How good is my hand at drawing? Ability, can I really draw? Everyone is not an artist. I'm definitely not. So when we had to make diagrams, it used to be a big, big exercise. So competencies are not just one thing that we can categorize as. It's a mixture of knowledge, skill, ability, and behavior. And some of them are natural and some are acquired. So if they are natural, very good. But if need be, we can acquire them. The best part is they can be acquired and they can be applied to the task effectively to make it better. Okay. So I'm so sorry, my throat always gives me trouble. Right. So this is what is competency was all about. So now shifting our focus to skill demonstration. I just said that knowledge, skills, and your behavior and all that, these totally combine together to make competencies. So what we as the new age educationists are trying to do, we are not in favor of rote learning or teaching to our students. We are shifting our focus to the demonstration of their skills, right? Okay. So when we use competency-based assessment, we shift the focus from rote memorization to skill demonstration, I just said. And instead of just taking written exams, we try to assess our students through performance-based tasks, projects, simulations, and real-world applications, right? We are not dependent totally on written exams now. You are all educationists over here, and I'm sure you'll all agree that today we do not just depend upon written exams. There's so many projects that we give them. We have portfolios, we have class assessments, we have peer assessments, we have self-assessments. So all of these are done in the same, I mean, the requirement or the basic idea behind these is that we are trying to build up our students the complete personality. We are not trying to make them into parrots as they used to be. I remember my own classmates, they would just keep on writing without thinking what they are writing. A lot of it was quite irrelevant, but they thought that filling up of sheets is to get marks. And it was a very strange idea that the examiner is not going to read what you are writing. They will just see how many pages you've written and you'll get marks. So this was not real education, right? So today, when we are assessing our students, there are so many things that we keep in our mind, and then we assess them as to where exactly they stand and whether they'll be able to use these competencies in their future life. Because whatever they are doing is for future. We are not teaching our students to learn and forget. As soon as the exam is over, you forget it. No, they have to remember what they are learning. So one is studying and one is learning. Study, they go and do at school. But learning is what they ultimately get from what they have studied at school. How well or how nicely or how beautifully they can incorporate that learning in their future tasks and life. So these assessments require students to apply their knowledge, to think critically, to solve problems, to be good, effective communicators, to collaborate with people, because you cannot live alone. We need a society to live. So we have to learn to collaborate. If we think that I can do it all on my, no, we cannot. We need people to collaborate with and also demonstrate other relevant skills depending on the situation. And as ma'am had just a few minutes ago told me, how to use those skills in a particular context or situation. Okay, now the analysis or the definition of our task the task at hand today. This is the analysis. Now, competency is a characteristic of an individual. My competencies are not like yours and yours are not like me. We're all different people, so we cannot be the same. Somebody may be good at one subject, another may be good at another. I may be good at English, but maybe, no, why maybe, I'm actually not good at maths. So why? So I'm not very competent when you talk about maths. So competencies eventually lead to the demonstration of your skills and abilities. As per your competency, that is what you're going to reflect when you go out to work. They also lead to effective performance and they embody the capacity to transfer skills and abilities from one area to another. That is, if you're good at something, like if I'm good at music, say for example, then probably I can use my musical skills in a class, in a class of small kids by singing out nursery rhymes to them and make them happy. And that way my work will be simplified and it will also reach its end result. That is, I'll be able to teach nursery rhymes to my students in a nice manner because probably I was using my competency as a singer. Okay, now what are the types of competencies? I just mentioned there are some natural ones and there are some which we acquire. So there are some basic competencies, and when you add professional competencies to them, then you get a nutshell, which is your competency in a broader aspect. So if you are competent, you have some basic competencies and you have some professional competencies as well. You must have seen children, you must have seen girls who are very young, maybe 5, 6 years old, and they tell their parents or their younger brothers and sisters, you sit down, I'm going to teach something. So this is a bud which is going to become a flower when she grows up. She has that basic competency of becoming a teacher. Other kids, you must have seen, they dance to the tune without your telling them to do it. Why? Because they have this basic competency of being good musicians, of being a good dancer. They know what is, in Hindi we call it lay, tal, etc. So the beats, they understand the beats. So that is a basic competency. But when you align it through professional competency, you become good at that particular skill or art. So basic competencies, they exist in all people. Only the degree of their existence differs. Some children may be very good at academics, some may be very good at singing, some may be very good at making of models. So the basic competencies are there. If somebody tells me today you make a paper boat, I will do something. But there could be another child who's very good at this kind of art. What did we call it? Oh,
Ma'am, origami? Origami.
So somebody who's very good at origami will be able to make a much better paper boat. I know what I used to make as a little girl. So basic competencies are there in everyone, but the degree of excellence differs in each one of us because we're all different people. But professional competencies are job related and are above basic competencies. So these have to be acquired. Whatever job I'm looking at, trying to become a teacher or a medical doctor or an engineer or a lawyer, whatever. So accordingly, I have to cultivate those competencies which are going to suit my vocation later, right? Any confusion till now? I think it's all very clear, right? Okay. So now what are the types of basic competencies? Firstly, I'm doing this because we have to understand what are competencies and then how do we apply them to our teaching. That I'm going to discuss in the later part of the webinar. So there are 4 types of competencies. First is intellectual. Here, wherein the individual needs to know what is required to perform well in studies. Like, suppose I have to study history. So what kind of competency is required? To remember, right? Remember and recollect at a later hour. So science, you have to be very, you have to have a critical kind of thought process where you can analyze what is happening. So these are different intellectual kinds of needs which are required or needed by students to do well in studies. And this includes the basic knowledge of foundational literacy and numeracy. We all know what is FLN, right? Foundational literacy and numeracy and natural expertise. Like I just mentioned, that you can see when children are growing, you can see what kind of competencies they have. Then there are motivational competencies. This determines the level of motivation within an individual. There are some parents who try to demotivate their children by comparison. He is doing so well, she's doing so well, you are not doing it, your brother did so well in science, you are very bad at maths. No. In fact, we have to motivate the children so that they can develop their competency. Okay, so what? This time you were wrong. See, this is how you could have solved it. If this is not happening through your plan A, you can use plan B. So this focuses upon the engagement level of a person, but this person or the student has to be motivated by the people around him or her. So motivational competencies also come in when the child gets motivated by the people who are around him or her. Emotional. Earlier, we did not give importance to emotional IQ, right? But today, these emotional competencies are those which determine the emotional quotient of a person. Some children are very, very kind-hearted. Some children in fact, they're the opposite, who feel happy in troubling others. So a lot of their competencies, as a nutshell, it depends on how emotionally rich you are. So the capability of an individual to recognize their emotions and use them effectively to achieve one's goals. I'll give one example. I had a teacher when I was in 11th and 12th. I still hold her in very high regard. She was my English teacher and my class teacher also. And what she told us was, when we were young girls, she said that she was a very, very avid runner, very health conscious. So she said that when she was not married and she was trying to, maintain her physical ability, she used to run in the morning. She would jog. And when she got tired, she would say, okay, at that corner, I'm going to meet my best friend. And then she would run to that corner. Again, after reaching there, when she was tired, again, she would say, okay, another 200 meters and I'm going to meet my friend. So she was herself emotionally motivating herself. Her emotional IQ was pretty high. She did not give up. And till date, I remember, because this was something which really, really affected me. And I tried to follow her. I could not. But sometimes, certain things, they really appeal to you. So I still remember what she said in the class. And then lastly, we come to social competencies. These are determined by the behaviors that are essential for social adaptation. Rude people will not be liked by anyone in the society, whereas people who are polite, who speak well, they become pets, or you can say they are liked by most of the people around. There was a WhatsApp message which came that those who speak sweetly can even sell chilies, but those who speak bitter will not be able to sell chocolates also. So it's not what you are selling, it's how you are selling, it's how you are exhibiting yourself in society. This also forms one of your basic competencies. Okay, some common examples, they're all here. Whatever little thing they are doing, even like we are, most of us, I could see ladies, we all work in our kitchen. So when we go to the kitchen, we don't just start working at random. We have to plan what we are going to make for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and accordingly we get our ingredients. A teacher who's going to the class, she also or he also has to plan what exactly is to be taught and how it is going to be taught. Then decision making, what is right? What is not so important? This is the decision that we have to make at all levels. Forget about teaching, at home also, regarding our house, regarding our children, regarding our relatives. So many decisions we have to make. There's a wedding, you've been invited. Can we go? Can we not go? If we can go, fine. But if we cannot go, why we cannot go? So there's a decision. Communication skills, we all know, till we do not communicate with each other, we won't be able to do anything, because again, in Hindi, as we say, akela chana bahar nahi phut sakta. So alone, we'll not be able to survive in this world. Result orientation. Here I'm showing 100% results. No, result is not always 100%. So if whatever percentage we get to should be good enough at a particular moment, and then we can always try to excel. We can always try to make ourselves better, because we do nothing without a particular goal in our mind. If we are making breakfast also, there is a goal that we have to start our day with, and we need enough petrol in ourselves. We need enough, fuel within ourselves to complete the day. So how to start it? That also is a goal. Teamwork, as I said, is very important. To make your dream come true, you need a team. So we all work together, even in school. There are so many subject teachers. There are so many other kinds of educators. So we all get together, we all put our efficiencies and competencies together to make our children the best of students. And creativity, of course, we have to be creative. And creativity here does not mean only painting or drawing or something. We can be creative in so many other ways also. The children don't want to study on a particular day, so you create a quiz for them, and it should be based on your study material. So that is also being creative. You can think of another kind of an activity which is going to interest your students, and it also helps them learn a certain fact. So we can be creative in so many ways. It's not necessary to be only artists over there. Okay, now this is a nutshell which I'm now giving you. Competency includes, this is the triangle of success. It includes skills, attitudes, and knowledge. So competency is a mix of skills, attitudes, and knowledge. Now, what are the skills? Goal setting, time management, reasoning skills, communication skills, interpersonal skills. These are all the skills that we need, or they are the need of the hour. Attitudes are so many. You have to be self-motivated. I just mentioned my teacher. Self-confidence, you have to be confident about yourself. You have to have a lot of integrity. You have to be honest. You have to be optimistic. You have to be enthusiastic. You have to be cooperative to be working with the team. And you have to be committed to the work which you have before you. So these are the attitudes. And knowledge is of your basic things, theories, information, facts, figures, description, learning, science, etc. So these all form your knowledge. So competency is a mix of skills, attitudes, and knowledge. Now, I'm going to talk about the iceberg model. I know, I'm sure you all know what is an iceberg. So an iceberg is a huge piece of ice which is floating in the sea, and the disaster of the Titanic, I'm sure nobody can forget. So this is the iceberg. An iceberg is just about 10% of its volume above the water, and 90% remains hidden under the water. So now what happens is, competency also has some components which are visible, like your knowledge and skills are visible to the people. Okay? Knowledge and skills are visible to the people, but the things which are not seen by the people are behavioral concepts, like your self-concept traits and your motives. For example, I'll just show you what all are there. The iceberg model will show you. Knowledge and skills are what? Like, you can see that a child is very good at mathematics because that particular student is able to learn complex formula easily. So this you can see, you can feel. All right, this can be seen about a child. But what is hidden inside the self-concept traits and motives are, he has a lot of confidence we are not able to see, and he also is not able to exhibit it before you. The child is calm by nature. This is also a trait of a child. So this may be because we have 40 people or 40 children or 50 children in our class, we are not able to realize that a child is calm by nature. Sometimes we also are not able to see that a particular child is looking forward to achieve goals. He wants a little bit of help from you, a little support, but we cannot give because we also have our own limitations. We have just about 35 to 40 minutes in a class, of which 5 minutes are spent in going and coming out. So to speak of it, actually, you just get about 30 minutes in a class. So 30 minutes and 50 children. It's so difficult to manage. I can very well understand. So these are certain traits and skills of children which are hidden. But now that we know about it, let's try in future that we try to find out the hidden traits of our students. That is, I will request all the teachers over here to do. Now, the importance of the iceberg model is, I'll do it quickly because it's getting late. It's important to understand that there is a relation between the competencies which are above the surface and those which lie beneath the iceberg. The aspect of competencies which lie below the surface, like self-concept, motives, and traits, they directly influence the usage of knowledge and skills to complete a job effectively. In fact, what is seen is not as important because that is naturally evident. But what is not evident, what is not seen, this is what we as teachers and educators, we have to search for. What lies below? What is underneath? What are the self-concepts and motives and traits of our children? This is what we have to dig out, which I'm going to discuss as we proceed further. The components of the iceberg model, again, the same thing. It's being done only in a pictorial manner. There are skills, knowledge, self-concept, etc., and traits and motives. Now, it's easy to develop your skills and knowledge. Okay, the outer circle that you can see, it's very easy. It's relatively, I will not say very easy, but it's relatively easy to develop skills and knowledge. But it's very difficult, and the most difficult, sorry, it's got back. Yeah. What is most difficult to develop is the trait and motives. We have to somehow motivate our children to develop those traits which they already have, but they're not able to understand that they have those traits and motives. Sometimes a person himself or herself is not aware of the competencies that they have. So we as teachers have to actually look at our students in a very, very positive manner, hello? Priyanka ma'am, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you. Yeah. So it's difficult to develop these motives, but if we as teachers help them, I'm sure children will be able to develop these concepts also. Now, shifting focus to skill demonstration. Now we are coming slowly towards the basic thing that we have to discuss. Competency-based assessments shift the focus from rote memorization to a demonstration of the skills, which the child may have naturally, or we may have to develop in them. So these assessments require students to apply their knowledge. And this is something which I've been shouting from the rooftops, even when I was an educator and even when I was the principal. Make the students apply their knowledge. Okay. Just learning and sitting in an examination room to answer questions for me is not education at all. We have to help them to think critically. We have to make them problem solvers. We have to make them effective communicators and collaborators and any other relevant skill which they want to demonstrate. So now we have shifted our entire thought process from rote memorization or rote learning to a demonstration of skills by our students. The key elements of competency-based assessments are, let's see, clear learning outcomes. Like when we are testing our children, what are we doing it for? Is it just making them answer certain questions? Why did Alice go to the woods? Because she was carrying food for her grandmother. Who did she meet on the way? She met a wolf, a wicked wolf. This is not increasing our knowledge at all. It's just a fact which is being mentioned. What are we trying to get out from that story? What we are trying to teach our students from that story, that should be a clear learning outcome. We are trying to teach our children that do not trust strangers. This is something that we need to tell our children, that if I'm teaching you this story, this is what I actually want you to learn. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. We know the rhyme. But what are we again trying to teach them? That if you're not careful, you may fall down from a height. So if you're doing something like this, if you're taking a risk, be very, very careful. Okay. So these are the kinds of outcomes that we are trying to make our children understand. Now, the assessment has to be authentic. It has to be related to what learning outcome are we trying to do. This again, I've done it subject-wise towards the end. So the assessment has to be authentic. It has to be related to the text or that material or the syllabus that we are doing, and also related to the outcome or what result are we wanting our students to get. Rubrics and criteria, like different types of questions, which ma'am mentioned at the beginning. There could be long answer questions, there could be short answer questions, there could be HOTS questions, there could be easy questions, there could be fill-ups, there could be matching of tables. There's so many types of written kind of assessments that we do. But over and above that, there are certain assessments which can be done in another way. Communication skills, make them speak. How relevantly they can speak up, give them a story to recite, give them half a minute. Say something for just half a minute, give them a topic, Republic Day. So the child stands up and he just shoots off. Republic Day is celebrated on the 26th of January every year. It is celebrated because the Constitution came into play on that day. We have a wonderful parade on now it's been renamed the Rajpath, and the President of India takes the salute. There are beautiful jhankis, which take, so half a minute is gone. This is relevance. We have made them speak about something which is very normal. We don't want them to speak about rocket science. Any simple topic can be given on which the child can speak in a relevant manner, coherently and logically. So this would be one kind of criteria for your judgment. And towards the end, continuous assessment also, like when you are testing your children, when you're assessing your children, you have to be continuous. I mean, earlier, I'm sure all of you remember, we used to have just half yearlies and finals. In between, there was nothing. Children would play and forget. And just about 15 days before the exam was to take place, mothers would sit down with their children, nikalo ye kitab, wo nikalo, ye padho, tumhe ye bhi nahi aata, tumhe wo bhi nahi aata. Kyun nahi aata? Because they were not in practice. It was not taken up on a regular basis. So neither were the teachers taking up regular assessment, nor were the parents bothered about it. But today we know how important it is to have a continuous assessment of the learning of our children. We must not forget that, because anything which has to happen in the right way, it has to be a continuous kind of development. Now, the benefits of, you may get confused, but if you want to click pictures, please do it. And later you can ask me questions also. Now, what are the advantages or benefits of competency-based assessment? Firstly, as I just said, real world relevance. And this also I started because I remember somebody, I think there was a little WhatsApp message which somebody had sent that there a gentleman is saying that, you know, sine theta plus cos theta is equal to tan theta was something which we learned, you know, in class 9 and 10 during our school time. But have we ever used this in our lives till date? I haven't. I mean, maths teachers, those who become maths teachers must have used it. But to me, sine theta, cos theta, tan theta, cosine, and whatever, cotan, all of these make no sense. So was it really relevant to my real life when I was to grow up? No, it wasn't. So today, whatever we are teaching, we have to see that it helps the child in the real world when he or she becomes a trusted and very, very, what should I say, a competent person in the world, a successful person. So our assessments should be based on real world relevance. Also, these kinds of assessments, they individualize learning. The questions are not only focused at one kind of student, very, very intelligent. All sorts of students, slow learners, mediocres, very, very intelligent children with very high IQ. So these assessments are not made only for one particular type or category of students. They are individualized so that every child can be tested on something which he or she is good at. So we have made these assessments individualized. Some of the assessments, they test the higher order thinking because, again, now we cannot neglect the quick learners only because there are slow learners in the class. So sometimes we have to give them, or we have to, because it is individualized, and now things have become so easy because of online teaching, these kinds of questions can be put up to intelligent or quick learners in an online manner. So they can solve, and this, what the advantage is that the other children will not feel bad about it because this is being done separately. It's not being done in the class. Now, it depends on a teacher how he or she wants to do it. But today, the competency-based assessments also test the higher order thinking skills of children. And also because we are doing it in an individualized manner, we can give meaningful feedback to both the students and their parents. Because parents don't know much about teaching. There are so many of my students' parents used to come and tell me, "Ma'am, हमें तो पता नहीं, हमने तो पढ़ाई नहीं की, आप संभाल लीजिए." So they have so much of trust in you. They know that what you're going to do is for the benefit of their children. So when you give them a meaningful feedback, when you let them know that your child is doing well in this particular field, they feel happy and confident about it. It's not necessary for every child to stand first in the class. It's not possible. If there are 50 children, they can all not come first. They cannot rank on the first rank. They cannot be. So, but they can be good at something. So when we provide meaningful feedback, it enhances their confidence. It boosts their own self-esteem. Right? So this is the benefit of competency-based assessment. Some more of these: skill development. I've already told you that we give importance to development of skills. Then it also lays down some clear expectations. What is required of you? right? I remember one of my teachers, the bio teacher, she showed us everything. I mean, she was not somebody who would come and read out the textbook in the class, which unfortunately I've seen in many schools as principal and vice principal, that teachers read. They're teaching science, they're reading. Well, I'm sorry, science teachers, reading is not the way to teach science. You have to show them things. It's a factual subject. You show them facts. So she had bones, this is just one part I'm telling you, bone of a rabbit and also of a frog, and a human skeleton, which was not a real one. It was a plastic one. So she showed us the difference. This is a human hand. This is the hand of a rabbit. This is the little hand of a frog. So we could differentiate between different bones, and this is what was given to us during the spotting exam. She would keep a lot of specimens, and we had to see and write down what exactly they were. So this was not something which was coming out of the textbook. This was something that we were learning on our own. It was an experiential kind of learning. So there were clear expectations that you should learn to differentiate between the bones and body parts of different living beings. Then flexibility. If you have competency-based assessment, you have a lot of flexibility. You can change. There's no hard and fast rule. There are not those watertight compartments that you cannot come out of that. So depending upon the core competency of your class, putting all the students together, you can make your questions flexible. And this again goes a long way in assessing them in the best possible manner. Then when we use these competency-based assessments, the learning path becomes transparent because the children understand what are they being judged at. Earlier, we did not know if we were answering questions, what were our teachers trying to know from us? That we could mug up the syllabus. What was the actual thing that the teachers were trying to judge? We were confused. We didn't know. Maths का पेपर है, वो आप प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर लो. इंग्लिश का पेपर है, आपको nouns और verbs ये सारा आना चाहिए. But today, children are being told that, okay, this chapter we are doing because this is what I want you to learn. If I'm doing the circulatory system today, I want you to know that how does blood flow in the entire body and what are the diseases that are related to circulatory system. So that just in case, God forbid, if there's a problem in your home, you know what is to be done. आप रोना धोना ना शुरू करें कि अगर ये क्या हो गया. You can immediately help your family member or your friends. So children know what exactly they are doing, and that makes things simpler and easier for them. The transparent learning path. Some more benefits. There is fairness and equality. You cannot say, or we cannot say that the teacher is being biased towards one, she is favoring a particular child. No, because now children understand their competency because they can see. They can see what their classmate has done and what they have done. So this is one more benefit, that students are satisfied with the kind of marks that they are getting, or the kind of grade that they are getting. They also know that they are being prepared for the real world. Whatever they are doing is not something which is to be forgotten. The skills that they are learning, it's going to help them when they grow up. And also, because of these kinds of assessments, the parents and students do not have to wait for 6 months to know how good they are or where do they exactly stand, because we are continuously giving them feedback, and we are also giving them suggestions to improve themselves. So these are the benefits, all benefits put together of competency-based assessments. Now, this is exactly what we all of you must be thinking. बता तो बहुत दिया मैम ने, ये होता है वो होता है, but इसको implement कैसे करें? So this is where I'm going to give my suggestions how to implement these different kinds of assessments. So to implement your competency-based assessments effectively, we have to align the assessments with clear and measurable learning outcomes. We have to be firstly clear in our own minds. What are we trying to judge? For example, if I'm giving a dictation test to my students tomorrow, what am I going to judge? What am I doing? That children are just simply able to learn the spelling and write it over there without understanding how it is to be pronounced and what is the meaning of that word? No. I want my children to know the spelling. I want them to know the meaning, and I also want them to know in which context can that word be used. So it's not just dictation for spellings. There are many more things which I want my students to learn. So my assessment is in tandem with this kind of learning outcome. Then we design authentic assessment tasks that mirror real world scenarios. For example, we teach our children area कैसे calculate करते हैं in maths. अभी area हम calculate करते हैं, but why? So tell them, okay, there is a cricket field or there's a football field. The length is so much and the width is so much. Now, what is the total area? So relate it to something which they can see in real life. We teach them to calculate the volume of, say, a cylinder. How is it related to real life? Tell them, when you go to buy a geyser for your house, a new geyser, see what is the actual volume, and according to your need, you buy a geyser accordingly because you know what is volume now. So we have to teach them things which are related to real life, not something which is theoretical. So the assessment has to be like this. For example, I can give a question that even a geyser has two walls. It has two compartments. So we tell them to calculate the volume of the outer cylinder and the inner cylinder, and then ask them how much is the volume in between. Or we tell them this is the volume in between and this is the volume of the outer one. So what is the volume of the actual part of the geyser that is holding water? So then you can calculate that whatever you are buying is good enough for your house or not. I mean, it has to be designed. I'm just giving an example. It's up to you to decide. Then we have to develop comprehensive rubrics or scoring guides to evaluate the demonstration of competencies. If there is something which is very deep and a lot of analysis is required, give more marks to it. If it's just fill in the blank, you can have half a mark or 1/4. So depending on the difficulty or the level of ease of your question, you have to give them the evaluation marks or the rubrics. It depends. That, of course, we all do. This is nothing new. Then also feedback, I just said, is very important, and we must supply or give opportunities to students to reflect on their learning and set goals for improvement. Like, for example, there was a very, very intelligent student in my class, and this was about 35 years ago. I, being an English teacher, I told them to write an essay on the uses of science in everyday life. This child did not understand the question, and he wrote about rockets and satellites and, you know, all these man-made huge gadgets. I could not give him marks, and he was very heartbroken. So then I told him very, very affectionately with a lot of fondness, because I liked that particular student. He was very good, and I also was very sad because he had scored low. So I told them, beta, understand. And then I told the entire class, when you get a topic to write something, understand the topic. Don't just start writing because you may be off tangent. So set goals for improvement, teach them where they've gone wrong and set them on the right path. This is a sacred duty of all of us as teachers and educators. Competency assessment in education. So in an educational setting, these assessments allow us educators to measure whether students have mastered specific skills or knowledge areas necessary for their academic progression. And again, it shifts the focus from just learning, mugging up, to the application of the knowledge which they have received. Again, implementation of competency-based assessments. I'm just reading out because the examples will follow. Competency-based assessments shift the focus from simply measuring knowledge acquisition to evaluate a student's ability to apply knowledge and skills in real-world context. It's a repetition. This approach emphasizes the what students can do to what students know. All right. What students can do is more important, and what students know is not important. It is important, but what takes precedence is what students can do with the knowledge that they have acquired over the years. So we should, as educators, understand that effective implementation of competency-based assessments requires a systematic approach, which requires careful planning and execution. It's not something कि चलो बैठे हमने question paper बना दिया हो गया. No. Think. How is it going to test your students? Make it systematic. Think about all the strategies which I have just discussed, the hidden concepts, the iceberg rule. Keep all of these in your mind. So educators should focus on creating a learning environment that promotes a deep understanding and application of knowledge. Again, I insist on this. Understanding is something which is really, really important and not just mugging up. Okay, dates have to be mugged up. Okay, the Battle of Panipat happened in 1526. You can't change it. That is a fact. But other things change. Your theories can change. Somebody says walking before dinner is good. Some theories say walking after dinner is good. So you are confused. Now we have to actually again do a lot of research and find out what exactly is good for human health. All right. So now we'll have some assessments which we are going to align with clear and measurable learning outcomes. The first example is this is what we should remember. SMART. Our learning outcome should be specific. This I think everyone should remember. The learning outcomes for a student should be specific, measurable, achievable as per the grade that they are studying in, relevant again to the grade that they are studying in, and they should be time bound. So if you make an acronym out of it, it comes as SMART, which is SMART. So learning outcomes have to be SMART. Authentic assessments engage students in tasks that resemble real life challenges. Okay, you put them in a certain situation and they would love it, you know. Just one day, say, not very young students who are somewhere around 7th or 8th in that grade, tell them that, okay, we are having a picnic today. So you make a tent for yourself and let us know what all things you require. So now they make them into groups, put them into groups and tell them you plan a tent kind of a picnic, which is going to last for just about 4 hours in the morning. So let them make a list. What all do they need? They need some kind of cloth for the tent. They'll need ropes. They'll need some poles. And then tell them that you have to cook for yourself so they can bring Maggie packets. So let them do something and see how they are going about it. Now, we are not judging them on their rote knowledge. We are judging how can they work in a real life situation. Are they good planners? Are they good executors of the plan that they've made? So this is a real life challenge which can be put, and I'm sure they're going to really love it and enjoy it. So these kinds of assessments, they provide opportunities for students to apply their knowledge and skills in meaningful ways, because you never know. 10% of them may opt to join the army later, or they may want to go for NCC. So when they do all of these things, they are already prepared for that eventuality, right? So our assessment tasks have to be, based on real life scenario. Okay, now development of comprehensive rubrics or scoring guides to evaluate the demonstration of competencies. I still have 10 minutes. Okay, I'll try to hurry up. Now, the rubrics are basically scoring tools. We already know that these clearly define the criteria for assessing student work. They break down competencies into observable levels of performance. Okay, the competencies are not, again, they're not something rote. These have to be observable, something which the teacher can feel, not see. Some certain things can be felt and according to the performance of the student. And this helps students to understand the expectations which are there by the teacher from them, and provides a clear pathway for their improvement. Now, concrete examples of competency-based assessments. As I said, I'll do it, subject-wise. So for mathematics, like I just said, sorry, this is science. Align your assessments with clear and measurable learning outcomes. This is one part I'd mentioned earlier. So for example, if we take science, the learning outcome is that students will be able to design and conduct a scientific experiment to test a hypothesis. Like for example, if you add iodine to protein, something which is proteinous in nature, what will happen is it's going to turn black. So you can have different kinds of food items and you put iodine into each one of them. If it is not protein, if it is something else, it's going to turn black. protein will not turn black. Similarly, there used to be another reagent. So when we did the food testing in our 11th and 12th, we were given different kinds of these reagents, and we could make out, we could test. Again, so the traditional, if this kind of experiment was given traditionally in the previous times, there would be a written test with multiple choice questions about the scientific method, which was again very rote kind of learning. But today, if you want to turn it into a competency-based assessment, we will make the students design and conduct a small-scale experiment in the class, write a lab report, and present their findings to the class. So they are doing it themselves. The teacher is not teaching. She's just given, or he has just given a few guidelines. The teacher has given guidelines. Students are doing it themselves. So when you do it yourself, you'll be able to do it better. When we were kids, if our mothers would have just told us how to make a chapati, would we just do it because she told us verbally? No, we had to do it. We had to knead the dough. We had to roll it out. We had to put it on a griddle and then cook it. So after doing, we learned how to make a chapati, right? So it's a skill which developed over the years. So similarly over here, when there is something scientific which needs to be done, the teacher will give them a pathway and the students will do it themselves. And this learning is going to be forever. It's not going to end. They will never forget what they've done themselves. So this is an example of competency-based assessment. Okay. Now, the second one would be to design authentic assessment tasks that mirror real-world scenarios, as I've mentioned earlier also. So what do we do now? Let's see. English, my subject. The learning outcome that I need is that students should be able to write persuasive arguments supported by evidence. Traditionally, we could have just given them write an essay with 5 paragraphs, and this is the topic I've given. But today, what will the new kind of teacher do? The teacher will make students participate in a school board debate on a controversial issue, requiring them to research, develop arguments, and present their position to an audience. For example, why did the Ahmedabad crash take place? You give me your report. Write a report on the incident and do a research. Before you come out with your comments or your deductions, make a full kind of report. What could have gone wrong possibly, or what actually went wrong? So when the students do it themselves, firstly, they get interested. They will understand how to collect data from different sources. And then whatever they present is not something which we have taught them. It is something which they have learned on their own. And again, this is going to stay with them for their lives. And that is the kind of permanent learning that we are looking for. Third example, development of comprehensive rubrics or scoring guides to evaluate the demonstration of competencies. How do we go about this? Mathematics, which I'm pretty weak at, but anyhow, learning outcomes, students will be able to solve, this is what we are looking at, real world problems involving geometry. Now, I remember when I was in junior classes, I was given a lot of theorems that ABC is congruent to PQR, and you go, now I can see that they are congruent. I can see that they are similar and equal, but I have to still go, about proving it. So I found it now an exercise in futility. Today, we are not doing the same. Theorems are a gone thing. They're very, very kind of forgotten thing. So here, if we have to find out, like I've already given the example of a hockey field or a football field. So take the children out there, let them measure. Let them see for themselves what is area all about, what is volume all about, and then create a rubric to evaluate their ability to identify relevant geometric concepts. You take them to the field and say, iska volume calculate karo. So let's see which student comes out and say, ki ma'am, field ka volume nahi hota, iska to area hi hoga. Okay. So then they can communicate their solutions very clearly. And the levels of performance, again, are not mark-based. They could be from a beginner to exemplary. Somebody who's done it okay as per their age, and some children could be exemplars. Their work or their deductions could be exemplary. Make them understand what is area and what is volume. What's the difference? We don't teach them things which are relevant. I've seen teachers taking up fractions. They say a fraction is a part of a whole. Now the child doesn't know what is a whole. They do not know what is a part. So what's the pretty idea of telling them that a fraction is a part of a whole? Show them. Take an orange, peel it into different, हम हिंदी में भागे बोलते हैं, so little parts, and show them this is 1 upon 12, this is 2 upon 12. So they'll understand, okay, whole was one full orange and these are parts. So these are the parts of a whole of an orange. अभी उनको समझ जाएगा. आप ऐसे ही verbally बोलोगे part of a whole, they won't understand. So this is what we have to do. Real life example so that they understand the concept clearly. Now, the fourth point is provide ongoing feedback, which I've said, and the opportunities for students to reflect on their learning and set goals for improvement, because life is it's a series of improvement. So it's not just the students who improve, we also keep improving as we move ahead. So let's take up history. The learning outcome is that students should be able to analyze primary and secondary sources to form historical interpretations. Like, why did India lose its freedom? How did the East India Company come and establish itself when they were just a few hundreds and we were thousands and lakhs? And yet, why did it happen? So let us learn from our mistakes which we've done. We were not united, right? We did not have the arms or the ammunition to fight those people because they already had, and we were so gullible. We were not united. We thought, okay, हमें पैसा दे रहा है, हमने रख लिया. I mean, whatever would have happened, so that the students have to learn. Sorry. So after they've done, like this was just an example which I gave. They could write about just anything. Why is the Gupta period known as the golden age of India? So then, they will find out why it was so good and can those policies be implemented today. So they will do their project, and after they've completed the project and they submit it, they have to be given a specific feedback on their ability to identify bias, to corroborate evidence, whether, are they biased? I mean, they should not be partial towards a certain aspect. Then they should be able to provide the real kind of evidence for whatever they've written or the kind of result or deduction that they've made. And they must have the ability to have a coherent, an argument which is persuasive. Something which will make me feel, okay, yes, my student is correct, even though I may be different, I may differ in my ideology. And then as a part of reflection, the students are going to write a reflective journal entry about the learning process, and they will identify their own strengths and areas for improvement, and teacher is going to help them do that. Okay. Were they correct in the way they proceeded? What were their strengths? The kind of evidence that they found, was it really good? And we have to appreciate the students for their work, because appreciation is absolutely necessary. And then we must tell them, okay, if this was not up to the mark, this is how you can improve. So based on the feedback, now from here, we when we have to climb steps, we go on step 1 and 2 and then 3. Similarly, this was probably the first rung of the ladder which they're supposed to climb. Accordingly, they can continue to grow as per the feedback which they receive from their teachers. So now they are in a position to set specific goals for their next historical analysis project, and they can improve their performance through counter arguments which they and their other fellow students are going to make. So to conclude, I can say that competency-based assessments, again, it's a kind of, a repetition of what I just said earlier. So to wind up, they offer a more comprehensive and relevant approach to evaluating the learning of our students. And when we shift focus to skill demonstration, these competency-based assessments, they provide students with the opportunity to apply their knowledge and develop a lot of practical skills, and they in turn get prepared for real-world challenges. So with the emphasis which the competency-based assessments, they give on individualized learning, they emphasize on higher order thinking, meaningful feedback, and skill development. So these kinds of assessments, they pave the way for a more holistic and effective educational experience that prepares our students for success in their future endeavors. And that is what we as teachers and we as educators are looking at. We all want our children to become successful when they grow up and they become responsible residents of our country. They can even go, abroad and make our world shine. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching this presentation. Any questions, anything specific, I'm here to answer. So good to see the 78 people. Thank you, Anna ma'am. Yes, it takes time to prepare such huge presentations, but I'm happy I'm able to share my whatever little knowledge I have. So, any questions, Ravi sir?
No questions as such, ma'am, only appreciations.
Thank you so much, sir.
So we wish, what do we say, the participants to come forward in case you have any queries that you want to just check with.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the appreciation.
Yeah. So now I request someone to come forward and give a feedback. Rita ma'am, we would really feel very happy if you
It's
could.
under which domain? Domain 2?
I couldn't hear the complete question.
This webinar will be under domain 2
Domain 2.
because domain 1 is core values and ethics, and domain 2 is knowledge and practice,
Yeah.
and domain 3 is professional growth and development.
It is
No,
professional growth and development.
Okay, domain 3.
Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a wonderful, inspiring session.
Thank you, ma'am. It was
Thank you,
basically
Ravi,
for
sir.
teachers. It was for teachers to, so that they could use their own efficiencies in order to make students study well and understand, and then, which I've been again saying, for so many years, they should be able to apply the knowledge gained to their real life scenario.
Right, ma'am.
Otherwise, teaching, it comes to a naught.
Yes. Anyone else? Anyone else who would like to give your feedback? That would be really great. Okay.
So the examples which were given at the end by ma'am were really helpful. The practical examples subject-wise when ma'am was giving related to history, English, the difference between the normal question and the competency-based, that was, I really find it very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. So, dear participants, it's very much evident that you all have thoroughly enjoyed this particular webinar today because the topic is as such. It is all about competency-based education and assessment. So, we are sharing the group link. We have a webinar group of SNTTC. I have just now shared the link of the webinar group in the chat box. Those who wish to stay informed about our sessions can join this particular webinar group, wherein we will be posting the flyers of our day-to-day webinars. So it's in the chat box. You can click on the link and join the session. And coming to Archana ma'am, it was indeed a wonderful, knowledgeable, and informative session, Archana ma'am, because competency-based education and assessment, how many ever times you listen to it, there is something again new to learn from it. So we wish to learn more and more from you in the upcoming days, and we wish you conduct many such more webinars for the SNTTC audience. Thank you so much. Now, it's time that